Hi boys and girls. Today we are going to begin a new story this week called How Do You Raise a Raisin? And this week our target skill will be drawing conclusions. So before we begin our lesson on drawing conclusions, I need you to go get a few items. You will need your reading textbook, page 375. You will also need a scrap piece of paper and a pencil. So go ahead and pause the video and go get those items. So we're learning about drawing conclusions. That is our target skill for this week. We've already learned about drawing conclusions in another story, so this should be a review for you on drawing conclusions. What does it mean to draw a conclusion? What do you think it means to draw a conclusion? Boys and girls, drawing a conclusion is just making an educated guess. It's making a guess. How do we make a guess, though? Well, when we make an educated guess, we have to read the information within our story. So we gather the facts, we gather the information. And sometimes we're able to make an educated guess based on those facts and information. Another way we can make a guess is by using what we call prior knowledge. It's knowledge that you already know. So you can use your prior knowledge, you can gather the facts and information from the story you're reading, and based on all of that, you can make a guess. You can make an educated guess. Now, we use clues to figure out what the author maybe didn't come out and tell us. For instance, if I told you there was a smart animal who's eating bananas, I didn't tell you what the animal was, but you could use your prior knowledge to make an educated guess. And your educated guess could mean that that animal is a monkey. What if I gave you the scenario that Susie was saying, "Hey, kitty, kitty," and the cat meowed, but refused to come closer. So she grabbed onto a sturdy branch above her head and climbed in a little closer. Tell me, what conclusion can you draw about where she is? Where do you think that cat is? Yeah, up in a tree. And how do I know that? Because I was able to use my prior knowledge that I know cats like to climb trees, and she grabbed onto a branch. So that tells me that that cat is in a tree and she's trying to get that cat down. Let me give you another scenario. What if I told you I'm with my family, I'm waiting for my food to come out, it's taking a long time. So as I wait for my food, I play tic-tac-toe on a napkin with my sister. And then we play with the salt and pepper shakers and the sugar packets. Where do you think we're at? Yeah, probably a restaurant. If you're waiting on food to come out and you're playing with sugar packets and drawing on a napkin and using the salt and pepper shakers, my guess is you're probably at a restaurant. So I use my prior knowledge and some of the clues from what I read or what I said, and I was able to make an educated guess. That's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be reading a story, and I'm going to ask you a question, and as I read you the story, I want you to think about that question. I want you to activate your brain and your prior knowledge, and we're going to find evidence, gather that information, and make an educated guess. We're going to draw a conclusion. So go ahead and turn to page 375 in your reading textbooks. Okay, before I begin reading, before it's a raisin, it's a grape, here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about what conclusion you can draw about making your own raisins. What conclusion can you draw about making your own raisins? Now, my prior knowledge is already activating right now. My brain is already thinking because I just asked a question. And my brain is saying, wow, I don't know. How would I even begin to make a raisin? So right there, you're already thinking and you don't even know it. So that's our question. That's what we're going to be filling out. After I read the story, we're going to fill out a graphic organizer based on that question. What conclusion can you draw about making your own raisins? All right, here we go. Before it's a raisin, it's a grape. Did you know that? Raisins come from grapes. Grapes have been grown in California for the past 200 years. During the 1800s, men came looking for gold. Some of them ended up growing grapes instead. Today, most of the grapes we eat come from California. About 550 farmers grow grapes there. The warm, dry California weather helps grow sweet fruit. Americans eat an average of about 8 pounds of grapes a year. Most of them come from California. Many other countries enjoy grapes grown in the United States. People in Canada, Mexico, China, Taiwan, and Central American countries eat grapes grown in our country. People in ancient China drank juice made from grapes, mixed with snakes and frogs to feel better when they were sick. We can leave out the snakes and frogs. Grapes are good for use for us by themselves. Think about that. Would you eat grapes mixed with snakes and frogs to help you if you were sick? I know I wouldn't. That would probably make me even more sick. So, let's go back to our story and our question. Our question was, what conclusion can you draw about making your own raisins? Well, we gathered a lot of information from that text we read. Before it's a raisin, it's a grape. So we're going to fill out our graphic organizer together based on the information that we read. So if you're at home and you don't have this specific graphic organizer, that's okay. Get your scrap piece of paper and you can follow along with us. So, first things first, how would I even possibly begin to make raisins? What do you think? How would I possibly even begin to make a raisin? Well, we know from our story, from the information that was given to us, that before we can even have raisins, what do we need to have? Yes, grapes. Before it's a raisin, it's a grape. Raisins come from grapes. So that's what we need to write in our first evidence. Before we can have raisins, we need to grow grapes. So go ahead and write that in that first box. Before we can have raisins, we need to grow grapes. Okay, what is another piece of evidence that we can gather about making our own raisins? Now, it did not come out and tell us how to make raisins, but it did talk to us about how people, specifically in California, grow grapes. What do we need to have in order to grow grapes? Think about it. Think about us here in the Bath community in Ohio. Think about the fields in our rural community. What do people need to have to grow things? Well, grapes, it talked about warm weather. It talked about warm weather. That helps us grow grapes. So we need to make sure that if we're going to make raisins, we first need to grow grapes. And that the climate has to be warm. So the climate has to be warm in order for grapes to grow. That's important information because if the weather is snowy and extremely cold, do you think that we're going to be able to grow grapes and eventually make our raisins? No, we're not going to be able to. I also know from prior knowledge that if I want to grow something, it is going to have to start happening late spring in the summer, because I know that there's not many things that grow in the winter. So I activated my prior knowledge that I know that when we grow things, the weather has to be warm. What else did it say? What other evidence? Activate that prior knowledge. How else are we going to get grapes to grow? Think about the seasons. What else needs to happen? Go back in your story and find clues. What else did it say that needs to happen in order for this sweet fruit to grow? It also needs to be dry, boys and girls. It needs to have dry weather. So if it is raining all the time, that's not good for the growing season. It needs to have a dry place in order for these grapes to grow. So we cannot grow grapes in a wet area. It needs to be dry. So we can't grow grapes in a wet area. It needs to be dry. It's no different than here, boys and girls. Yes, we do like a little rain every once in a while to help water our plants. That is important. But at the same time, if we get tons and tons and tons of rain, it floods out our crops. It becomes so saturated with water, it actually makes our crops not good, makes them die. So in order to grow grapes, you have to have a dry area. Based on that conclusion in the climate, that's why California is a great place to grow grapes, because California is warm, very warm, and it's dry. They don't get a lot of rain. So that's probably why I can make that conclusion right there, why California is where we get most of our grapes from, because that state is dry and warm. Now, based on this information, the evidence that we came up with, let's go back to our question. What conclusion can you draw about making your own raisins? Well, number one, I know that before we can even have raisins, I need to grow grapes. And it has to be warm and dry. That's a lot of hard work. Before I can even have the product that I want, I have to grow something else in order to get my product. So my first thing that I can conclude that making our own raisins is going to be hard work. So I can say, I conclude, because we're making our conclusion now, that making our own raisins will be hard work. And why is it going to be hard work? Why is that all going to be hard work? Well, yeah, because we have to go through the process of growing grapes first. We have to go through the process of growing grapes first. So you have to go through the process of growing grapes first. Go ahead and write that. I'll give you a minute to write that. So boys and girls, we just made an educated guess. So our question was, what conclusion can you draw about making your own raisins? Well, it did not tell us specifically how to make our own raisins. It didn't come out and say what we needed to do to make our raisins. What it did tell us at the beginning of the story is that raisins come from grapes. And it talked about how we could grow grapes or what we needed. Well, to grow grapes, we need a warm, dry area. And that's why California grows most of the grapes and why many countries enjoy the grapes grown in California. So based on the evidence that we found and our prior knowledge that we came up with, we can conclude that making our own raisins is going to be hard work. Why is it going to be hard work? Because we have to go through the process of growing grapes first. And we know in order to grow grapes, we need to have warm and dry area. So boys and girls, remember, drawing conclusion is making an educated guess. You use your prior knowledge, you use your background knowledge, things you already know, and you find clues and information and facts from the story, and you put those two pieces together, and you make an educated guess on what the author is trying to tell you. Boys and girls, you did a great job today. Continue to work hard and really focus and think about drawing conclusions. When we can draw conclusions based on our prior knowledge and the evidence we find within our text, you will be able to understand your stories much better. Great job.